Oh wow. When did I realise I transitioned from Scrum Master to Agile Coach? I'll be honest, I'm not sure I've admitted that to myself yet. I've played both roles. I think, and this creates a storm every time it comes up on social media. What's the difference between a Scrum Master and Agile Coach? Oh, a Scrum Master is an Agile Coach. You don't understand what you're talking about if you think it's different. Well, a Scrum Master operates with Scrum. It's in the Scrum guide. It's there. It's somebody who is there to help the team hold themselves to the rules of the game that is Scrum. An Agile Coach isn't necessarily interested in Scrum. They may be working with a single team. They may be working with many teams. So I've definitely stepped into the Scrum Master role relatively recently in my career. I have worked with one team to adopt Scrum, to help them understand it, to adopt the practices, more importantly the values of Scrum, so that they could get back on track. I did that for about 4 months. They got really good. We brought in another Scrum Master who could continue with them longer term than I had the availability to. They went on to be a decent team. I was a Scrum Master by the guide, Scrum Master. Okay. We can go back a decade. It was probably the first time I was called an Agile Coach, because, again, what is a Scrum Master who's not doing Scrum? I had 3 teams. I can remember working with them. There was one team doing Scrum. There was one team doing Kanban. And there was one team that, I'll be honest, was making up as they went along. All 3 very, very good teams. My role was not to enforce Scrum, was not to help them obey the rules of Scrum too. The teams weren't using anything that looked Scrum-like. My role was to help them own and improve their process. Help them have clarity across the piece. All 3 teams were working in a very interlinked way. It wasn't ideal, but it was what we were doing. My role was to raise the information to a level where everybody understood it. I was an Agile Coach because I wasn't a Scrum Master. One team was doing Scrum. I suppose for them I could have been called a Scrum Master, but for the other 2, the term Agile Coach made more sense. And in the 10 or so years between those 2 points, I've probably served in both camps. More Agile Coach than Scrum Master, but I've served in both at times because it made sense. Now, what that means is that I've pretty much adopted the role Agile Coach, the terminology Agile Coach, a decade or more ago, because it was easier. When people say, I'm a Scrum Master, the immediate assumption is that you work with a team to implement Scrum, to improve on the Scrum framework. And that's not always what I'm doing. So I use the term Agile Coach. I don't see there being a huge difference. A Scrum Master is meant to be working across the organisation to help the organisation understand this Agile thing, work better with the Scrum team or teams that they're working with. That's no different to an Agile Coach. Just drop the word Scrum and they're doing the same stuff. It is to help organisations be better at building the things they need, be more adaptable, be more flexible, be more responsive, ultimately be more responsible citizens in the 21st century. So if you need to put a label on it, go for it. I use them relatively interchangeably. When I'm talking about Scrum Masters, very often they're working with Scrum, but not always. And when I'm talking about Agile Coaches, I'm probably just meaning Scrum Masters, because they may be working with Scrum. It makes up 80% in Scrum and Scrum-like approaches to Agile. Most people do something like it. Scrum Master might be a good term. So focusing on when people transition from one to the other is missing the point. Okay. Now, when I started working with executives, when I moved into the portfolios and the boardrooms and things, they didn't want a Scrum Master. Scrum Master's this IT thing. An Agile Coach. They wanted coaches about. Well, that's great. It has utility. In fact, very often I didn't have a job title. I was just John. And that worked really well. But if you're stuck on that, am I a coach? Am I a Scrum Master? I want you to just take a moment and ask why it matters to you. And that question, and the answer to that question that only you can come up with, will really help you understand. Are you an Agile coach? Are you a Scrum Master? Which one works for you and why? If you've got to this point in the video, I hope you've enjoyed it. If so, a like would be appreciated. If you want to hear more from me, more answers to questions that maybe you've got in the Agile world, please subscribe to the channel. And if you've got a question that you really want answered, drop it in the comments. I promise we'll get around to it. Thank you.